So in AP class, we're working through AP problems. In my regular class, we're doing real-life example problems and standards-based stuff. Sorry about that. So this is a video that kind of takes you through what I was talking about in the first day. Kids are playing with the material. Okay, and they're doing a little. At night, they're watching the video for homework that demystifies it. I'll talk a little bit more, but what you're going to see is there's an associated Google form with the video. So kids are going back and forth, filling in a summary of the video they've watched. You know, this is speeded up, by the way. I know, sorry. They're watching it, they're chunking it, rewinding it, filling in the form, making a little summary of the lesson. Once I started doing this form piece, everything changed. Okay, immediately. So they're going through the lesson. This is the night before. Hopefully what they're doing is following a rubric that I've made for them as how to write the summaries of that. John?
You mentioned how you handle copy-paste on this.
Okay, yeah. I'll do it live for you guys. Okay, so they're going through it. They're getting some examples. I always use the same template for my lessons. We do concepts first. We do examples and definitions and that kind of thing. They hit submit, goes to the Google spreadsheet. I get that night. I give everyone 5 points for watching the lecture. Next day, they walk into class. We do a brief Q&A. The way I do the Q&A is I pump all those responses from the spreadsheet into Wordle and make a word cloud out of their responses. Once they get the word cloud, I ask them the question. I say, are all the words that are big supposed to be big? And that starts it off. Are the words that are small supposed to be small? So that came directly out of their responses. And this is actually a really nice example because they just watched a lesson on the ideal gas law. And the ideal gas law involves pressure. Okay, it's a law. It involves volume and temperature and all that kind of stuff. So 5-10 minute discussion. And then we just jump into the application piece. And this is just a meaningful Q&A. I'm not saying, what did you guys not get? You know? And then we can randomize it. And sometimes I'll be like, come up here and see if you can read the really small letters. And they'll come to the board, you know. But it's all interacting with the lecture they just watched.
I could see them like when they're writing their summary the night before, just predicting what this is.
Oh, yeah. And then we print them out. We have them on the wall all over the place. It ends up being see, this is the design thing I'm talking about. Wordle's a tool. We've seen the Digital Goonies and people like that talk about tools, right? Here's a cool tool. Here's a cool tool. Here's a cool tool. But here's a cool tool that we're using for Q&A of a learning cycle that involves a lot of other cool tools that's based in the research. So then,
How long did it take you to do that?
I'll do it in front of you right now. I'll do it right now. Okay. So then they're applying the next day. So this is what always excites people is this piece right here. This is when this presentation goes from dull to like. All right. So if you guys want to see real quick, let's go to that exact spreadsheet. It is a Google conference, so what? By the way, I wish there was a documents button initially. All right. So there's my chem lectures. Here they all exist. Because it's here, I can sort by the lecture, right? So the reason I use one form the whole year is so everything's cataloged in one space, by the way, so I don't have to keep going through it. Although I'm thinking about using Flubberoo for specific self-graded responses, which is another application. All right, so we could take 13.4, and we could just copy everything. And then we could open up Wordle. And then we can say create. Paste it down. All right, so this came out of that one. You can randomize it. You know, however you want. So you can get them through a lot of things. But I don't even do it every day because then it's overkill. But a lot of times they get excited about it because I've actually asked the question. I said, draw the word cloud for last night's lecture. So you do this 3 days in a row, then they draw it. And then you hold each one under the document camera instead. Or you take a picture of it with your iPhone and, you know, whatever. You got Ustream on your iPhone and up there and you hold it over or something. And then the kids can all do it. And once you do that, then they have to really start thinking about the lecture even more. So just kind of a cool, neat application of that. So other ideas, the pre-training model I talked about earlier, homework solutions. I heard a quote once, I have no idea where it came from, but I always love to quote this. And a little plug for TEDx at Minarets High School coming up on August 5th. I'm going to actually say the real quote, what I remember writing down. But it went something like 50% of the students need you to go over homework more than once. 50% of them don't need you to go over it at all. So if you go over it once, you don't reach anybody. So I don't know how true that is, but you know, I remember thinking to myself, I have to go over homework. It would be a justice issue if I didn't go over homework. But what I've seen some teachers do is just take that 15 minutes and throw that online. So teacher walks in and says, if you need to see the homework, go to the homework link on the website and rewatch it as many times as you want. So you're putting them in charge of their own learning, and you're cataloging for the 50% that needed it more than once. You're also respecting that really nerdy kid that needs that time and doesn't want you to go over it in class. So you're like giving everyone a lot of love. Live essay grading. I teach a class at USF, a research methods class, and I do this when I grade their theses. I just go through and pull up track changes and go through and just screencast myself going through their paper. And then I send them a link. Instead of giving them a paper that's all crazy marked up, and then they're pissed off and they just, it's not productive for them. Everything's going in one channel. It's all about cognitive load. Everything should be about maximizing their working memory. Meaningful substitute lessons. So on my class website, I just have a link that says sub lesson, and the lesson would be go to musallamchemistry.com, click on this date, play this video, have students now practice this problem, now play solution to video. And the kids get practice, they get the solution. It's a meaningful way to spend the class period. And then you can do that from anywhere also if you put it online. We'll talk some more about your guys' ideas later on in the workshop session. And one is flipping the entire teacher. So doing it from a student end, which we talked about.
Hi, I'm Bob. And I'm Paul. And today we're going to teach you how to round a decimal. Today we're going to round 6 263 thousandths. Thousandths as in THS. Because it's in a decimal area, you have to put thousandths because it's a part of a whole. So, now we're going to round to the hundredths place, as in THS. So now we have to figure out behind the decimal, which is a hundredth. And that's the 6, which is 2 spaces over from the decimal, to the right. So Bob told me that he had a saying about rounding decimals in regular whole numbers. So what you do is you look at the hundredths place, and you say to the place to the right. You say, which in this case is the thousandths place. Number 3. You say 5 or above, give me a shove, as in you would move the 6 up to a 7. Or you say 4 or below, keep me down low. So we look over to the right and we see that 3. That's below a 4. Is 3 higher than 5? No. So we keep it down low. So what you do is you keep it as 6.26? Exactly. Wow. So the answer, you take out the 3, and there's your answer. 6.26.
Yeah. So if any of you guys have been lucky enough to meet Eric Marcos, he's a teacher in LA and has a website called mathtrain.com. And he does a lot of work for TextMath, and his whole thing is flipping the classroom, teacher-produced videos. So kids sign up for different concepts. They come into his room after class. That was done using just a straight tablet PC, and he uses Camtasia Studio. And you can tell it's a tablet PC based on the way the eraser looked, if you're really used to using that kind of stuff. And you get everything. You get the personalization effect because kids are familiar with one another. Okay, and then you get all this other crazy empathy, peer-to-peer learning stuff, which is a whole other area of research. So I'd argue that he's got probably the ideal setup. He does it the way we all, I don't feel comfortable having my kids teaching the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation about buffers and stuff when we're doing it. But I would feel comfortable with them teaching, some simple chemical nomenclature, some chemical reactions. So he provides a model of really where I want to go because I think it really overlaps well. The only thing is, and this is because I'm really nerdy, is kids might not used to be seeing each other's handwriting. So they're really used to seeing my handwriting, but we can get around that. So the specifics. If you were to go to, and let's just go there right now. Does anyone have any questions before we get into the specifics? Because we'll be done after this.
You said you were going to talk about how you handle copying and pasting in the spreadsheet for the summaries.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm sorry about that. What I do the first day of class, when I walk in, and I'll show you my first lecture. I'm rebuilding all my lectures right now, so I only have 2 up. But I'll show you the first one. Give the kids a brief little idea of how to do the summaries and stuff. That's all I say. They go home, they do them. They walk into class, and then I pull up the spreadsheet. And because it's all in the spreadsheet, you can sort their responses alphabetically, right? So what that means is ones that are identical are going to show up right next to each other. So if kids wrote a summary and then emailed whatever the other kids their summary and put it in, you can catch it. And it always usually happens with at least one section. So the kids see it with their eyes right there, and they kind of laugh about it. But they see, and I give them credit, whatever, and then they see, though, that I can do that. And they just trust that I'm going to do that every time after that point, which I don't ever do that ever again, right? If you're watching. So, but the thing is, it's like their world, they're digital natives, right? Their world is in trusting this stuff. So you pull up a spreadsheet, you sort it, and you say, you guys both just shared that, and you laugh about it, and you give them a safe space to admit it, but they're just never going to do it again. They're just not going to. So that's usually what I do the first time, and then I throw it into the word cloud. And often I'll just pull up a really nice one and read it to the class. But I have a rubric for that, which I'll show here in a sec. Yeah.
The flipteaching.com is where you've got all that other stuff, and then this AP chemistry.
Yeah, so there's a link to that off of the bottom of in the extra content below Flip Teaching. There's all the links to everything, and I'll go to this from Flip Teaching just so you can see. So if you go to the bottom of Flip Teaching, related sites. This is my AP chemistry site. So here is the way that I have it set up.
And also, at the end of today, I'll email you guys the link, and all the presenters have their own page, and so they'll have all of their links on those pages. Okay.
So literally, I want extraneous cognitive, it sounds like a broken record. I want the environmental load to be low. That means low clicks. So when they open up the website, all they're going to see is the video that they have to watch that night. And I'm going to post that. So they open up the website, there's lecture 1, it's molarity. There's a form right below that they have to fill out.
If you didn't have this site and you were just sending out videos, what would you do about forums?
I'd use Google Sites. I use Google Sites, yeah, because it's all built in. Or use Blogger. You can use anything you can embed anything into. I don't like having a link to the video and a link to the form because that's extra clicks. And what I want kids, okay, so if you think about good professional development, one of the things you'll have these people come to your school and talk about, chunking and chewing and like think, pair, share and that kind of stuff. They talk about that because that really works. That's the way our minds work. But it's not really authentic if I do that with you right now. I say, now talk to your neighbor and come back to me. You're all going to kind of talk about something else, right? And then you're going to come back to me. But if you put this link, embedded link, right below the video, a kid's going to say to himself, I get credit when I fill out that summary. It's easier for me to fill it out when I stop and I write a sentence, and I play and I stop and I write a sentence. So their mind is chunking it because it works. That's the way the mind's built. And then they're going to rewind it. And if you watch that kid, that was me doing that one in that video earlier. Right? That wasn't the kid doing it. But that's just what they do. I sit and watch them in the library do it all the time.
Just everyone knows when you fill out a Google form, there's an option when you
First lecture of the year. Now, if you're watching this lecture, you should have had a chance in
I'll
class
show you
to
guys that.
explore these ideas. And then the point of this lecture is to fill in any gaps, give you a little bit more information, and then in class the next day we're going to play with these equations.
So I'm just talking about I'm not making it a big deal. I'm just talking about what we're going to do.
First one. So when you're doing a lecture, you want to follow along in your learning packet. You want to write everything that I write. For instance, in your notes, in your learning packet here, we're going to label this lecture 1, and the title of lecture 1 is...
So I've made a PDF of this template, and I just use it every time.
Now, the most important part of doing a lecture is doing summaries of the lecture. And you notice here, right below the video you're watching, you do have a summary box. And if you don't know how to do the summary, you can go here and click this button and look at an example of a summary. It needs to be 5 sentences, and this shows you exactly how to do it. If you want to get these...
So I specifically didn't pull that up for them, because I want them to do that on their own and go do that.
Get it in iTunes, meaning you're going to subscribe to a podcast. You need to keep plugging your iPhone in and updating it to get the videos of your iPod, etc. Or even directly on your computer if you have iTunes. But you need to go back and fill out the summary. This is the way that I give you that 5 points that you get for each video. I do not recommend you watching the video all the way through, taking notes, and then doing the summary. What I recommend is you watch the video. Once a point comes up, something you understood or you didn't understand, press pause. You're in honors, actually, following you.
Okay, so then I go through and I talk about the concepts first, I then give them definitions, and then I close with 2 examples. And that's the way every video is. Concepts, definitions, 2 examples. And then they come to class, and I'm confident that their misconceptions were identified in the concepts, that their definitions gave them safety in the fact that they felt like they had the vocabulary they needed to do to talk about it, and then the examples gave them time to work back and forth in their working memory a little bit right before class. And then we can just jump right into problems. And if they've watched it, they're good. And if they haven't watched it, they didn't get the 5 points, but they can go to a computer in the classroom and do it before. So that's just the rule. The rule is time-stamped 1 second before the bell rings. You know, so 5 years ago, kids scribbling down stuff in the hallway. Now, kids sitting in the hallway plugged in, watching the video, typing in the summary on their iPhone. Just a totally paradigm shift in terms of the way that they interact with that space. But the thing is, they don't know that they're doing all these different things. They're just doing what you tell them to do. And it fits with what they normally do. All right, so if you were to watch that video, and to make that happen, there were a bunch of steps that needed to happen. First, you had to have the tablet you got in front of you. Okay? Then, you got the tablet, but doesn't mean you can write at all. Okay? So then you got to be able to write. And that's the ability to interact with some software on your computer. How much time do I have?
20 minutes.
Okay. Once you can write, now, and this, by the way, is the absolute hardest piece. This is the hardest piece. And I'll talk about why in a second. You need to record the screencast, send it over to YouTube. That happens in 1 step. All the screencasting softwares have built-in one-touch buttons to YouTube now, so you got to think about that. You want to track them, meaning have that Google form associated. James showed that on the right-hand side. He had that in his Google site. I had it right below. That's the piece that's going to give you the ability to give them credit. And the other thing I realized, I was like, when I lecture to students, I never gave them credit for listening to me lecturing. Now they actually even get points for the lecture. It's like a whole built-in reward system. Dan Pink would hate me right now, but it's a whole built-in reward system that really helps them. And then you got to share it, so it needs to go out to the world. Those are all the steps that need to happen to make this happen. So let's talk about this on different platforms. Those are the 2 most important pieces, I think, though. The hardest one to do and the most important there at the top. In terms of tracking, this is the summary that I use. There's a link to this on flipteaching.com. This works really well for me, but you can use whatever you want. I just wanted there to be a set rubric that they followed every time. So the first sentence, in this lecture we learned, they give me the specifics. In the second sentence. Then they tell me something they got, they tell me something they didn't get, and then they tell me something it's related to in the real world. And that number 5 is tricky when you're talking about something really complex. So I know that if I gave them a 5-minute video, they're still having to do all of this. And this involves digging online and going to, using Edutecher and all those other great sites to be able to find information online that they can answer that question with. And it's really cool to see those responses. So now that I use this, I feel so safe in assigning a short video because it usually ends up being a little bit longer. And this process really helps them go through all of those pieces well.